Hey everyone, my name is Rick Gualtieri and this is Tales of a Midlist Author. Um, I'm back. As I said, I'm going to try to keep this going for at least a bit. I seem to do it in fits and spurts, I guess until I realize I've run out of topics to talk about. Fortunately, we're in an interesting time in the indie world, and I think I have enough to keep this going for at least several more weeks before I look and say, um, hi. First off, if you listened to my last video, I do want to apologize. I realized after the fact, and of course after I deleted the master video, that the sound cuts off in the last minute. Um, Apologies for that. I'll try to be a little bit better with my editing. You didn't really miss much. That was really just me saying have fun at conventions, which is kind of like, I guess, the wrap up. So you know, if you listened until then, you got the meat of it. It was just kind of a wrap up and saying, you know, when you get to a convention, the main thing is to have fun. All right, that out of the way, what I wanted to talk a bit today was about Trademark. Now, at this point, let's be honest, if you're in the indie world and you're not living under a rock, you are sick to death of hearing about trademarks. You've been beaten over the head with this stuff. So why am I doing this now? I guess as a little bit of a post-mortem, now that kind of like the brouhaha has died down a bit, you know, tempers have like, you know, kind of had a chance to back up a step. You know, hopefully a post-mortem, hopefully this stuff doesn't flare up again, although who the hell knows. So I just wanted to, like, you know, kind of like, you know, put my 2 cents in there. Funny story, I actually did record one of these right in the middle of when the quote-unquote Cockygate was going on. And once again, if you don't know what that is, just do a quick web search. I'm not really going to go into it in too much depth. And stupidly, I had forgotten to change my microphone settings. So it wound up being a 15-minute video of me just miming. So, okay. If you've been living in the author world and once again aren't under a rock, you've noticed there's been kind of a bit of a trend, a bit of a, I guess, a gold rush, a lot of insanity, a lot of hatred going on over the concept of trademarking. And really, it's not so much trademarking itself, which is the villain. It's been the fact that some authors have been trying to, and in one case succeeded, at least albeit temporarily, in doing a land grab on common terms and phrases that weren't necessarily their series title, or if it was their series title was really just a simplistic word. So I kind of wanted to talk about, like, when is the right time to trademark? What is the difference between trademark and copyright? Because holy crap, if you go onto Cape Boards or, like, you know, or other forums, every time you turn around, people are like, you know, are confusing copyright and trademark, and they are not the same thing. So first off, let me just offer a disclaimer, your typical anal disclaimer. I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. I'm not qualified to give legal advice. This is more from a layman's perspective, and somebody who's a business owner and, like, wants to know at least enough to, like, you know, to be dangerous or not dangerous or not stupid. First of all, trademark protection is pretty much what's in a nutshell. The protection there is you're protecting a brand identity, if you will. Copyright is the meat of the, like, you know, of the matter. So your book, when you write it, the innards of that book, not the title, because you can't copyright a title. The innards of that book, innards, that's what's copyrighted. And copyright protection in the U.S. is automatic. So you write that, like, you know, your wonderful tome or so, and it's automatically copyrighted for a small fee, and for a long wait. You can officially register it with the U.S. Copyright Office. I think it's like $35 or so. And that really just gives you, like, the legal protection that if somebody screws with your copyright, you do have the option, you do have, like, the protection of being able to sue and prove that, hey, yeah, this is my copyright. But copyright protection is automatic. Trademark is more expensive, and it's kind of a narrower focus. Typically, you're going to see, like, you know, like, the idea of a trademark is to protect something that is unique in the industry. Now, this can be common words. We all know, we're all aware of Apple Computer. And why is that? Why is Apple allowed to trademark the word Apple? Because they're not trademarking the fruit. They're not saying, hey, farmers, you can't sell this stuff. They're trademarking a brand name within a specific industry. They're saying in computers, you cannot be Apple. And that's why there's been this this big fight between them and Apple Records over the years. I believe the Beatles, old company, because especially since Apple Computer started stepping into things with iTunes and stuff. It is Apple Records. I don't know. I don't really listen to a lot of music, but so yes, that you can trademark common terms and phrases, but the thing is, it has to be kind of unique and kind of a brand identity. People know who Apple computers are. People know the Macintosh brand. If you were to start a computer company and grow it big and call it Dice Computers, you could probably trademark that, because that is a brand identity. You're not trademarking Dice. You can't tell people they can't sell D20s, because trademarks are also supposed to be a relatively narrow focus. The other thing about trademarks is copyright. You don't have to you don't have to go out there with with everything and being your story is similar to mine. I must do a copyright thing. Technically, you're not supposed to do that. Stories can be similar to each other. It's really plagiarism that that copyright protects against, or just blatant ripping off and such. And once again, not a lawyer. Trademarks, however, you have to defend. You can't just go out there and be well, hey, I'm Coke, and here there's a company out there called COKKE, cock. But I'm not going to sue them because I'm friends with their CEO. No, it doesn't work that way. It's either all or nothing. Because here's the thing: if you don't defend a trademark, if you don't protect it, you lose it. So let's get back to books. Why would you trademark? And here's the thing. And again, that lawyer disclaimer: I don't believe you can trademark a title, but you can trademark a series or a brand mark, if you will. Or series name or a brand mark. And the question is, why would you want to do that? Well, the excuse that's been thrown about by those who are doing this land grab out there, and and again, I'm not saying that if you're going for a trademark for your book, you're doing it wrong. I'm just saying this is the excuse that's being bandied about, is protection. Now, this kind of works for you if you have a unique series name. For example, and I'll just use my own rather than throwing anybody else into the thing. My main series is called The Tome of Bill. And for the longest time, and I'm in the process of rebranding, but I've had a series badge out there that basically is Tome of Bill with glasses and stuff. I could easily go out there and say, yes, that's my trade dress. People know that for me. Know that's me. The Tome of Bill is a relatively unique series name. I don't think there are other Tomes of Bills out there. I kind of hope not. So I would probably, one, be able to apply for that, and two, the truth of the matter is the industry probably wouldn't freak out because there's not too many people out there scrambling to write their own Tome of Bill, or or have a trade dress that is essentially a badge like that. I'm not, because the truth of the matter is, as many copies as I've sold, I don't consider it to be such a huge business that that it requires that. Maybe if I move into film or so, action figures at some point, yeah, then it probably makes sense. There's a lot of huge book series out there that aren't trademarked because there's I'll say that the whole point is protection. And the problem, I think, with a lot of the authors out there right now who are doing this is they're not looking at protection. They're using protection as an excuse. Really, the idea is stifling competition. So that's really the reasons why you would trademark. Honestly, there's not a lot of good reasons out there. I mean, here's the thing: generally speaking, if you're huge, you're selling a ton, and I don't mean you're selling a couple thousand books in your little niche a month. I mean that makes you big in the indie author community, but doesn't make you technically big. The question is, are you known for that particular mark? Stephen King, he could probably trademark Castle Rock. That's he's known for that. Harry Potter, Song of Fire and Ice. These are all titles that are series titles that, and Castle Rock I know is not a series title, but these are all things that are associated with a particular name in that industry. For example, let's talk about what would be overreaching. I have a book, Bill the Vampire. Bill, vampire doesn't appear in my series title at all. So if I tried to trademark vampire, ignoring the fact that one, I don't really it's not a series title. Even if I changed it right now to Toma Bill the Vampire, at that point I'm changing it after the fact. But it's overreaching because it's a common word. Lots of other people use it, and I'm definitely not the first one to lay claim to that. That prior art thing can come back and kick me in the ass. And again, the whole point of of books is you're not supposed to, is just from from forgetting about the letter of the law. The spirit of the law is that you shouldn't be allowed to tie up a word just to stop other people from using that word. It's not what it's meant for. It's not meant to be a strategic tool to stifle competition. It really is meant to protect you. And I think there's a lot of BS out there with the whole, well, people are copying me. Guess what? Welcome to the book industry. There's no original stories left to tell. There's maybe original spins on them, but chances are that whole "you're copying me" is more just you just getting your feathers ruffled than reality. Because the truth of the matter is, well, most books, they have the title, maybe they have a series title on it, and the series title is almost always much smaller than the actual book title, and then you have your author name. And yes, it is more than possible for somebody to say, oh, well, I bought so-and-so's books because they look like yours. Well, okay. But most people, I don't think that really that's really an issue. And in fact, a lot of times people might pick up another book because it looks like yours, because they're looking for something else to read, because maybe you haven't released something in a while. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, if they're here's where it would be overstepping. If I have a million plus, several million plus bestseller, once again, maybe Toma Bill just completely takes off beyond my wildest dreams. Fingers crossed. And somebody else comes out with a badge with a nerd glasses, and it's Toma Phil or so. That right there, yes, that's kind of blatant copying right there. That's one of those things where trademark would save you. Just saying, well, once again, we'll just use Cockygate. My series is called The Cocker Brothers, which it is not, and claiming that, okay, well, I'm just going to grab Cocky, even though it wasn't originally a part of my series title, and to saying, oh, well, nobody else can use this. That really isn't going to fly. Now, here's the thing. Outside of the fact that I think that can be easily legally challenged, and in this case it was, I believe the author in question surrendered that trademark after a whole ton of brouhaha. The truth of the matter is, the author community really just kind of rose up in arms over this, and it's still kind of going on because some other authors are still trying to trademark common words and phrases that they really do not have a claim to. Here's the thing, maybe I create a series and I'm going to call it Conan, right? Conan's a name, Conan O'Brien, whatever. Well, guess what? I didn't create a Conan the Barbarian series. I'm not the first who's using that. And as a result, am I really creating something unique? And am I known in the brand for it? Or known in the industry for it? Chances are not. But ignoring that for a moment, there's the reputation hit. Let's face facts. How often have the trad pub and indie pub come together as one for anything? Yet you saw that happen for this, and it's kind of still ongoing, as I said, with other cases, because I think both sides realize that that's a market stifling scenario. That's not protection. You're not grabbing something unique. Once again, Harry Potter is a unique name. Like Wizarding School or Wizards are not. There's a vast difference there. I mentioned words versus trade dress. Let's transition over to that. Other than the whole you're going to be crushed. That's another place where people were overstepping. If I have say I decided to rename my series the Vampire series, which is really kind of lame, I'll just say, but say I did. But then say I had a specialized, I had my cover designer designed a specialized plate for it, graphics that with like a stylized font and stuff. Well, here's the thing: if I were to just say, okay, trademark that trade dress, again, people might be a little up in arms, but they probably wouldn't completely pull out the pitchforks and torches, because I'm basically just saying you can't copy the way this looks. But there's also the overstepping is like, if you look at a lot of these filings, people are not only just doing that, but they're also trying to grab just the word itself. And they're not even saying, okay, the word itself in my genre. They're saying across all books. That is overstepping. For me to say, it would be bad enough for me to say, okay, I only want the word vampire in horror or urban fantasy. It is the height of arrogance for me to say I want the word vampire, period. Across all books. And so it's really not really that big of a stretch to see that the author community kind of said no. Oh, speaking of which, with that trade dress, make sure you have permission. You can't just grab any old font and trademark it, because you have to read like the end user license agreement. When you're working with your cover artist, make sure that actually trademark, or copyright and stuff transitions over to you for anything that's created. You want to make sure that you actually have permission to trademark something before you trademark that trade dress. So that's another thing to look at. And here's the other thing, and this I mentioned before, is you have to enforce it. You can't just selectively say, oh, I'm going to trademark, Game Pub, just to mention a similar thing, and then you say, well, but I'm not going to try to protect this. I'm just gonna hold it for me and and be a benevolent ruler. Trademark doesn't work that way. You can't be a benevolent ruler. This is why companies like Disney look at say preschools and say, oh, hey, you drew Mickey Mouse on your walls. Let's call our lawyers. Because that's the way trademark works. If you're aware of it, you have to go over it. You have to go after it. You have to protect it. Those are kind of my thoughts on that. I would say, above all else, before you move into this, talk to a lawyer and maybe possibly get a second opinion before you move towards anything. Some lawyers are going to be happy to take your money and just say, yeah, sure, whatever the fuck. Others might look and say, you really don't have a defensible case here. Really, what it comes down to in a lot of cases, I think, for this, and I think this is what possibly maybe some of the authors who are doing this are hoping for, is the fact that when you apply for a trademark, it doesn't cost anybody anything to to write a letter of protest. Look it up. It's on the USPTO website. It doesn't cost anybody anything, but if it slips through that and it reaches that point where you're actually granted your trademark, then it costs everybody money. And a lot of people will just cave because if I come knocking and say I own Vampire, you change it, and you're just like some little pissant guy who's making like $5 off of that, and I'm just saying from from that perspective. I'm not calling you pissant if you make $5. If you make $5 a month, that's awesome. You're probably going to be like, okay, I could fight this, but it's going to cost me tens of thousands of dollars. I'll just trademark it and just call my stuff undead or so. And that's, I think, what a lot of these trademark trolls are really hoping for. The problem being that when they do hit that one person who does fight back, one, it's going to cost both parties a lot of money, and two, I don't think these trademarks are really defensible. It's just my opinion, once again, not a lawyer. And so at that point, you have to ask yourself, what have you really gained by doing that, other than having lost a lot of money? Oh, and also having your reputation trashed, because let's face facts, at that point, the entire author community is going to come down on you with the fury of 1,000 suns, and very few people are going to step back and be like, oh, maybe we should be nice to that person. Maybe they had their best intentions at heart. I got to be perfectly honest, at this point, nobody's buying my lawyer was stupid. They filed something that they weren't supposed to excuse anymore. It's just throwing that out there. Oh, and by the way, if you do have a lawyer who files these things without going over to you first and explaining everything, fire that lawyer, because quite frankly, they don't have your best interest in heart. All right, that is my 2 cents on trademarks. This is Tales of a Midlist Author. I hope to talk to you again soon, and we'll pick another topic and go with it. Later.